Be concealed. Man, we are true headhunters. Man, hurry up. Man, open-mouthed, got to where they were. Additionally, you caught the blind left and left. Oh, jerk. Man, what's wrong with me? Following his claimed confrontation with JayDaYoungan in 2020, NBA YoungBoy's said those things himself. However, his words in this recently discovered recording would turn out to be terrifyingly foretelling. JayDaYoungan would be shot dead in front of his grandmother's home in Bogalusa, Louisiana. Back in 2022, the internet went nuts when leaked audio of YoungBoy apparently confessing something that would change everything surfaced, even though the killers were never apprehended. Before we get a sneak peek at the tape that the feds have leaked, let I dissect the time frame that has people on the streets and online believing that NBA YoungBoy planned one of the most well-thought-out retaliation schemes in hip-hop history. Because what began as a quarrel between two rappers from Louisiana over a baby mama turned into a murder so well-planned and strategic that even the authorities were unable to overlook the connection. From the gory alleys of Bogalusa to Baltimore's Room 303. This is the tale of how a friendship descended into a lethal obsession. You'll see why the streets are claiming that YoungBoy didn't simply foresee Jay the D by the end of this video. He orchestrated Young's killing, but that was only the start. The true nature of the situation is far more profound than anyone could have predicted. Hey, how are you, family? We're going to get into some serious street drama that has been causing a stir in the hip-hop scene for years. This isn't your typical rap feud. This is about betrayal, loyalty, and deadly repercussions. Hold on tight, because what I'm about to share will make you reevaluate all you believe to be true about this case. Section on context. Let me keep it 100 with you all now before we embark on this crazy journey. Following JayDaYoungan's murder in July 2022, there have been rumors circulating on social media, on the streets, and in conspiracy theories regarding who actually ordered the hit. However, we are going to distinguish between the real and the fake, the fact and the fiction. For those who haven't been following along, Louisiana produced both NBA YoungBoy and JayDaYoungan, who were both emerging stars. Through their music, two young black men are attempting to escape the streets. Too gifted in this game, the rappers should have been brothers. However, the worst conceivable turn to the left occurred halfway between the come-up and the come-down. July 27, 2022. That was the day that everything changed, when several gunmen pulled up and started shooting. JayDaYoungan, whose true name was Javoria Scott, was outside his grandmother's home in Bogalusa, Louisiana. It was a quick, vicious, and lethal strike. JayDaYoungan was struck several times. In an attempt to defend his kid, his father, Kenyatta Scott Sr., was also shot. At the age of 24, JayDaYoungan passed away from his wounds, but his father lived. Now, don't assume that this was just another sporadic instance of street violence. There was nothing random about the circumstances of this murder. Everything about the attack, including its timing, location, and precision, shouted deliberate hit. This is where things get very hot, though. There are deeper ties than the Mississippi River between this murder and NBA YoungBoy's ongoing feud with JayDaYoungan. The beginning of the end of a story. Check it out then. Let's go back to 2019, before the murders occurred and before the feud became lethal. In fact, JayDaYoungan and NBA YoungBoy were awesome. They worked together on a song. On social media, they expressed their love for one another. These two appeared to appreciate each other in the competitive world of Louisiana rap, where affiliations and territory can mean the difference between life and death. However, we know from the streets and the industry that loyalty is put to the test when drama arises, not when things are going well. Additionally, drama took the shape of something that has ruined more friendships than money could. Ladies, when reports surfaced that JayDaYoungan was supposedly associated with one of NBA YoungBoy's baby mamas, tensions started to rise. We now know that's a breach of the highest order in the neighborhood, on the streets, and in the culture. That is stepping beyond a line that cannot be undone. Whether or not the relationship ended is irrelevant. Whether or not feelings were present is irrelevant. Respect is what counts. And that respect was reportedly violated. Kentral Godon, better known as NBA YoungBoy, is not known for tolerating rudeness. References to getting even, remembering who betrayed him, and making sure his adversaries pay are common in his music. He didn't play around with his name, his family, or his respect, which is the foundation of his street reputation in Baton Rouge. The reaction was therefore unavoidable when he learned that JayDaYoungan had supposedly stepped out of bounds. The friendship ended in 2020. Subliminal messages were sent via cryptic tweets, diss recordings, and Instagram stories, turning social media into a battlefield. This was more than simply an online feud, though. The streets were observing. Notes were being taken by affiliates on both sides. Additionally, in Louisiana, where the murder rate is one of the highest in the country, and disputes between well-known people don't last long online. The altercation that began it all. At this point, the story goes beyond the drama and broken sentiments of a baby mom. You see, a number of sources and leaked communications claim that NBA YoungBoy contacted JayDaYoungan directly about the matter. The words that were exchanged during that encounter would later serve as the smoking gun that has led everyone to believe that YoungBoy was responsible for the events of 2022. Witnesses describe the purported confrontation in 2020 as being tense, frightening, and full of threats of revenge. According to reports, NBA YoungBoy need to hold JayDaYoungan accountable for the disrespect. Not would, not might, not maybe. That's some terrifying accuracy there when you examine what ultimately transpired. This is where things become fascinating, though. To his credit, JayDaYoungan was not giving up. He needed to keep up his street cred. He was supported by his own squad. And after this altercation, he began threatening himself in his music. He said he was prepared for whatever came his way. It was no longer merely a personal feud. It was open to the public. Additionally, public beef has a way of demanding resolution in the hip-hop community. Allow me to explain to you what was going on behind the scenes during this time. NBA YoungBoy has his own legal issues to contend with. Home arrest, ongoing surveillance, and federal prosecution. He still had a long reach in the streets, though, even from behind walls and ankle monitors. His Never Broke Again group was more than just a band. It was a family gang and organization that had its origins in some of the riskiest areas in Baton Rouge. Let me clarify for people who are unfamiliar with street politics. A feud between two rappers of NBA YoungBoy status is about more than simply those two people. The focus shifts to their entire camp, affiliates, communities, and reputations. Furthermore, hostility may turn from words to weapons more quickly than a heartbeat in Louisiana's tumultuous rap culture, where it is frequently difficult to distinguish between an artist and a street person. The progression from verbal abuse to physical harm. The real kicker is that the dispute continued to heat up between 2020 and 2022. It got more intense. There were several occurrences that kept the tension high. The frequency and intensity of social media interactions increased. On both sides, diss tracks, including more overt threats and allusions to actual violence, were produced. In records that were made public, JayDaYoungan allegedly questioned NBA YoungBoy's street status while under house arrest, questioned his integrity, and claimed to be prepared for war. NBA YoungBoy retaliated with his own songs that had subtle yet clear allusions to eradicating his adversaries, remembering who betrayed him, and making sure that disrespect has repercussions. This isn't just about music, though. Actual occurrences were taking place on the ground. Before the deadly shooting in 2022, there were suspected attempts on JayDaYoungan's life, according to street sources. Close encounters that involved sporadic acts of violence, but those without a voice were linked to the ongoing feud. By posting on social media about adversaries scheming against him and about keeping an eye on his back, JayDaYoungan himself appeared to be aware of the threat. Let's now discuss the circumstances surrounding NBA YoungBoy at this time. He was unable to physically commit any acts of violence and was on house arrest in Utah, which seemed to be a long way from Louisiana. Here's what the feds and the streets know, though. When you have the means, the contacts, and the drive to order hits, you don't need to be physically present. They need to be physically present. The separation between Utah and when it comes to retaliation, loyalty, and money. Louisiana is meaningless. We understand how this operates in the hood. It's not usually leaders that pull the gun. That is the purpose of soldiers. That is the purpose of loyalty. A young NBA player had established an empire in the streets as well as in music, with people prepared to ride for him wherever he was. The killing. July 27th, 2022. Thus, we reach that fatal July 2022 day. JayDaYoungan was at his grandmother's home in his birthplace of Bogalusa, Louisiana. It was intended to be a place of safety where family members might congregate away from the brutality of the streets. But when you're marked, safety is a myth. Based on police reports and eyewitness accounts, several gunmen arrived at the house at midnight. The assault was vicious and well-planned. Shots flew, striking JayDaYoungan many times. His father was shot as he hurried to assist. 9/11 was phoned by neighbors. However, JayDaYoungan's fate was already decided when emergency personnel showed up. Despite surviving poverty, life on the streets, and the perilous ascent to prominence in Louisiana's rap scene, the 24-year-old artist was unable to withstand this last assault. He was taken to the hospital and declared dead shortly after. Although he lived, his father was shocked after seeing his son killed. To be honest, the accuracy of this blow aroused concerns right away. It was more than a drive-by, with arbitrary shots. This was not a failed robbery. It was an execution. The location of JayDaYoungan was known to the gunman. They understood when to attack. They arrived armed with several firearms and several shooters. And they managed to flee without being quickly recognized or apprehended. Despite the Bogalusa Police Department's inquiry, no one has been taken into custody as of yet. No suspects have been identified in public. Officially, the case is still open. The streets, however, have their own judicial system, their own method of knowing, and their own conclusions even when the police may not know the answers. The smoking gun, the audio leak. However, this is where everyone is shaken by this story's direction. Leaked recordings purportedly featuring NBA YoungBoy started making the rounds on the internet months after JayDaYoungan was killed. Numerous people have examined this recording, which has not been formally confirmed. But it purports to contain words made by YoungBoy that specifically mention the murder and his role in its planning. The casualness of the purported audio is frightening. If it's real, it depicts YoungBoy talking to his friends about the hit, including the preparation, the execution, and the satisfaction of exacting revenge. Give it some time to sink in. This is not conjecture or gossip. According to reports, this is YoungBoy's own voice confessing to planning the murder of another rapper. Now, for those of you who may not comprehend how these leaks occur, allow me to clarify. Conversations that people believe to be private are frequently not in the age of wiretaps and federal probes. With the use of technology, the federal government may record conversations, intercept phone calls, and collect evidence without anyone noticing until it's too late. And it's feasible that law enforcement recorded this audio. NBA YoungBoy was already being monitored by the federal government on other counts. Since it leaked, this tape has been the talk of the town. YouTube channels, social media, and hip-hop forums. Every word, tone, and inference has been scrutinized by everyone. It is considered definitive proof by some. Others contend that it might be fabricated, altered, or misrepresented. However, regardless of its veracity, the impact has been enormous. The federal inquiry. The real question is, why has a young NBA player been charged with conspiracy to commit murder if this audio is true and in government custody? The response is nuanced and relates to the structure of federal cases. Federal prosecutors take their time. Brick by brick, evidence by evidence, and witness by witness. They construct cases. They desire strong prosecutions that are unbeatable in court. If they possess this audio, they are probably supporting it with additional evidence, such as security film, witness statements, bank transactions, and phone records. They are constructing an unstoppable case. Federal lawsuits can take years to develop, as anyone familiar with the culture and the court system knows. The federal government is patient. They observe, assemble, and wait. And when they do take action, the entire force of the federal government is behind them. Before filing charges, they're making sure that everything is in order if they are constructing a murder plot case against NBA YoungBoy. This is where the story becomes even more complicated, though. NBA YoungBoy is already facing further federal accusations that have nothing to do with the murder of JayDaYoungan. Among other accusations, he is facing charges related to weapons and possible gang involvement. It's possible that the feds are planning to include the murder conspiracy evidence in an already extensive indictment. Or they may be using it as leverage. The implications for culture. Ultimately, there is more to this issue than NBA YoungBoy and JayDaYoungan. It concerns the lethal cycle that has taken the lives of far too many young black people in hip-hop. It concerns the way that animosity turns from words to weapons. In street culture, devotion and reputation can have unavoidable repercussions. Among the most gifted rappers of his generation is NBA YoungBoy. Millions of people are drawn to his music because it is honest, unvarnished, and unadulterated. However, he can be destroyed by that same genuineness and connection to the streets. In addition to his immense talent, JayDaYoungan had a burgeoning fan base and a promising future. But now he's gone. Another fatality in an unwinnable battle. If the accusations are accurate, this battle embodies all that is wrong with hip-hop's revenge culture. Two young men with the potential to be allies and build together who, instead of using their positions to better their communities, turned into fierce rivals for women and disrespect. One gave his life as payment, while the other might have given his freedom. This isn't an isolated instance for those who haven't been following the larger situation. Rap in Louisiana has long been marred by violence. The number of deaths continues to rise from Doughboy to Lil Snoop to many others. And the rivalry between NBA YoungBoy and his rivals has sparked a culture of fear and retaliation that doesn't seem to be abating. The future and the aftermath. What comes next is the true question. NBA YoungBoy may be sentenced to life in prison for conspiracy to commit murder if the leaked tape is real and the federal government chooses to press charges. The situation would be enormous, attracting national notice and even altering the way law enforcement handles violence associated with hip-hop. However, the harm is done even if charges are never brought. JayDaYoungan has passed away. His family is in mourning. The trauma of witnessing his son's death still haunts his father. In the court of public opinion, NBA YoungBoy will always be linked to this murder, guilty or not. Regardless of his artistic ability, accusations of masterminding a hit have now entangled his legacy. People on the streets and online are certain they know what happened. The chronology makes sense. The motivation is obvious, although the purported audio appears to be incriminating. The judicial system needs more than just insider information and leaked recordings. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt is necessary. It is yet unknown if that proof is there in a way that can result in conviction. We are positive that this beef ended in the most terrible way imaginable. The claimed tape that suggested NBA YoungBoy was involved in the murder that stunned the hip-hop community escalated. What began as personal turmoil into something far more serious. Concluding remarks. Hip-hop culture is at a turning point in this scenario. Do we still exalt the street code that causes these fatalities? Do we continue to revel in the drama and the beef until more people are killed? Or do we figure out how to end the cycle and settle disputes without resorting to violence? To comprehend that retaliation merely generates further victims. If accurate, NBA YoungBoy's claimed involvement in JayDaYoungan's death goes beyond a single artist seeking retribution. It is about a culture that puts reputation over life, believes that the only way to deal with disrespect is by violence, and ensnares gifted young men in vicious loops of vengeance that lead to either death or incarceration. The federal government may or may not file charges. The sounds might or might not be real. However, it is indisputable that JayDaYoungan is no longer with us. He never reached his full potential. Grief devastated his family. One of the most talented rappers in the world, an NBA youngster, might be sentenced to life in prison for allegedly planning a murder based on a feud that never should have gotten this bad. The streets have been chatting. Furthermore, they assert that this wasn't arbitrary. This was no accident. Everything suggests a planned act of retaliation, including the accuracy, preparation, and purported admittance. It is a different matter entirely whether or not that is sufficient for a conviction. How do you feel about NBA YoungBoy's purported role in the death of JayDaYoungan? Do you believe the audio leak to be real? More significantly, what does this indicate about the future of hip-hop culture? For further explorations of hip-hop's most contentious moments, click on the content on screen and provide your thoughts in the comments section. Because the truth, whatever it is still being revealed. And this story is still being revealed. And this story